All right, so we have Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Finals 2025. All right, this is live. So I happened to open this right in the middle of the game's perfect timing. We did have well, I don't know if I'd say upset, given that Caruana was world champion in Chess 960 or freestyle chess. So this was yesterday. The results from yesterday. I'm going to pull it up now. Okay. So we had Caruana defeating Carlsen. I'm going to take a look at that one. And we had two draws. And Sindarov defeated, I'm not up on the pronunciation, we'll say Parham. Okay, Hans drew Aronian, and Kamer drew Aragaisi. Okay, so let's take a look at the live games. Oh, there we go. Round. This is quarterfinals game 2, yeah. Okay. So Hans has 6:47. Aronian only has 31 seconds. Vincent Kamer has 48 seconds. And we've got Caruana with 53 seconds against Carlsen. Okay, so this is game 2. And let's see. So I assume if Carlsen needs a win. And it looks like it just went in his favor, as I said that. Well, it was -3. Went even more in his favor. Let's take a look at where we are, how we got there. So we have Carlsen taking the lead. Let's look at it from his perspective then. Zoom in. I will zoom in on it. Let's home in on it. All right. No need to, you know what? Let's not mess. Everyone uses the eval, said, oh, this person's winning. Here's what they should have done. Let's just look at it ourselves. Okay, interesting. So he just shoves the pawn, strikes right at the C pawn. Magnus does. So let's see. The D pawns are undefended. Opening up his queen, aiming at the H pawn. And once the knight moves, I could see the G pawns coming under fire pretty quickly with the bishop, aiming at G2 and opening up against G7. And let's see if if the knights can reach D2 as well. Let's take a look at how they do this. Bypass by Caruana. And they both gain some space. A nice pocket for the knights. Now it becomes like a Dutch. I love that setup. Notice that since Caruana has pushed to C5, he's weakened the light squares, which is great for Carlsen because he has ready-made pressure on those squares. Great places to place his pieces and just gain control. It's just ready to go with this kind of Dutch setup. You can do a rook lift, hit G2 more, but if nothing else, just positionally, you can grab those light squares. Okay, there's that pawn under attack. Knight guard simultaneously hitting the light squares. Okay, queen is pinning the E pawn, getting some influence there, double attack, or not double attack, but two attacking B4. Okay, occupying that center, beautifully placed knight, reinforced 3 times. C6, smashing the pawn structure, forking the queen and bishop, allowing him to take the B pawn, then coming in with the other knight. She's probably took back 1, yeah. And then bypassing. Looks awkward for the bishop, but when we get this guy out of here on A4, maybe we could try to win the C pawn. That's the goal for Magnus later, I think. As well as, rook lift, maybe get some pressure on the king side. But he's able to play across the board. Let's take a look. Let's get forward. We'll look more at it later, but right now, let's just get to where we were. Now, this reminds me of Kramnik versus Carlsen, where out of nowhere, he just plays F5, G5, then crushes Kramnik. So I assume G4 is coming immediately. There you go. Okay, chasing the defenders away from the king side. Beautiful placement for the bishop. So you can see just excellent piece placement. Okay, now he's got the bishop here. Car1 is up a pawn, but Magnus has tons of plays, got to babysit the C pawn. Happy to get that back. Okay, he's trying to hold on to it with knight a5. Now there's a sack. Wow, is that for 3 pawns in there? You know, take, knight blocks. Yeah. If you were to take back, yeah. Okay, well, here's the live position. We have 2 minutes. What is it? Accidentally press forward, but where this is the live. Okay, they've still got some time on the clock, but they're definitely getting down to the live. Okay. So in this position, we can look at this afterwards, but I assume there would be knight f2. Oh, we can't take the d pawn. That's guarded laterally. I think he'd probably just storm him with the pawns, you know, get to g3, hit the pin knight, huge attack. Pretty safe king for black. Don't see him getting there anytime soon. He could use rook lift to, you know, cover the king while attacking. We'll take a look at that later. And meanwhile, the queen and knight are still babysitting the c pawn. If we crash through on, if we take the c pawn, we're really gonna strike the king side even more. But we already have a bishop, pawns, rook, maybe queens coming somewhere. Okay, so big attack. Car1 doesn't want that. He says, I believe you. I'm not taking that. Shouldn't always believe your opponent, of course, but he believes him here. Okay, Carlson, I don't think you're bluffing on that. Okay, here comes the queen. Again, beautiful piece placement for black. Now b4 is hanging. Now e6 is hanging. Brings the king up. Safe enough. Seems a little open, but safe enough. And mobilization. Got to mobilize the rook on h1. Almost all of black's pieces are mobilizing. I accidentally clicked it again. But we should fast forward anyway to get to key position. So he just came back with the queen and then guards f7, king f7 to guard e6. Now b4 is hanging. Interesting. So you can't take it. Try and maybe think about why not. It's pretty basic tactic because there'd be a check. Forking the king and queen, you got to take it. Discovered attack on the rook. So he picks up an exchange at least. Yeah, just an exchange. Okay, here comes the pawn roller. Nothing to lose. The rook's hoping to come out. Don't take en passant, really. Because if you take en passant, you do open up the half open G file, but then you also give room for white to defend. The rook can come out, the queen can get to f3 maybe, more space to defend. Centralization, get the king. Both kings are in semi kind of now. White's castled. Well, watch out for the h pawn. Black is pretty much castled with an extended kingside pawns. And interestingly, it's going into this kind of early end game, kind of late queen, more of a it's a queenless middle game. So now we're hitting b5. If he takes, fragment the pawns. Okay, he has to take back with the pawn to not lose the c pawn. What's his strategy to deal with these pawns? Well, his strategy is sacrifice. Okay, and then fork. So he basically, okay, so he coughs up the bishop, which is trapped, and then he still has the target on c6. Beautifully done. Okay, gets desperado because you're going to lose one of the knights anyway. So what are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Equal material. Got to worry about the c pawn. Magnus has kingside space advantage. Nice and nimble center. He starts pushing his center. Fixing. That's where I started looking at it. Fixing the d pawn in place. Kicking the rook. Hanging his. Oh no, he's not hanging anything. No, he's just solid. He's pretty solid. Can't really reach anything. Well, if he kicks the knight, then h5 could fall. The d4 pawn's a target. Bishop is stuck behind it. Good bishop versus bad bishop. Weak c6 pawn. Fixed in place. Goes for it. Okay, kicks. Interesting. Yeah, tit for tat. He kicks the knight, but first he's like, well, I'm going to take your pawn, hit your knight. Counterattack on the rook. Counterattack with the rook on the knight. Knight's coming in, hitting c7, but it's guarded. Rook hits knight, doesn't guard the knight on f4. Knight moves, and finally our knight moves with check. Looks awkward. Then he smashes the center. Wow. Oh, the intention is to undermine the knight's defense. So you hit the rook, take the knight back. What if can he get out of this conundrum? He tries to. Okay, so he comes in with the knight, hits the bishop. Pawn hits the rook. Lots of tit for tat. Okay, knight's hanging. Knight takes bishop. No, well, I'm hallucinating again. The knight was guarded, but he can't really get out. But he can hit f2. Then maybe he can shove these pawns. I mean, you got a cluster, 2 connected pass pawns. The third one can help as well. Those guys are coming in. So ultimately, after all this tit for tat, he ends up with a bunch of material. And then how many more moves? Oh, we only have 2 more moves to catch up. And here we are, ample time for both sides. I think it's 15 plus 10. Wow, what a game. So he finally, at first, black got rid of the annoying white c6 pawn. He ends up using it himself. But then white gets rid of black's pawn. Now it's 4 against 3, doubled pawns. They're doubled, but sometimes that could be a good thing here because it's harder for the rook to take, to take the d pawn by going behind it. And you want your rook to be behind it. We can't go there either. But it stops white's rook from immediately getting to d3. So maybe you can go for it now. But it will be tricky. This is super tactical. And I recall that it did say black was winning. Does it still? We'll check that later, but it looks dangerous. I don't know if the eval changed. It's funny that knight on h3 is really squeezed. You don't want to play f3 because then rook check looks dangerous. King moves back, and then you could take. You wouldn't probably take now because he takes the knight. Maybe you still would because you got 2 passed pawns. You probably still would. It's strong enough. I think so. Yeah, I mean he has like rook f6 check. Also, this bishop is a sitting duck on h1. You can use it to get to the back rank with tempo. So that looks pretty good. Okay, let's check out the other games. Any other results? Okay, Kamer ended up winning. And he was really low on time. It didn't matter. He figured it out. And he used his queen and rook heavy piece endgame. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's up a pawn. King looks really awkward. Is he walking into either a mate or losing his queen via rook f7? If the king goes back, rook f7 pins the queen. If he goes up, then rook f5 will be mate. Beautiful. We'll take a look at that later. Everything else, okay, we're getting a little lower. Pawns versus Aronian, we got 50 versus 30 seconds. But see, it went to pretty sure it's 15 plus 10, if I recall. What does it say? Well, you can quickly go back if you go to the boards. So which one should we look at? Which one looks really exciting right now? Well, they all are, but well, you can already see the eval says black's winning here. The other ones, white's winning, Sindarov is winning, Kamer won. Neiman and Aronian's apparently even. But just to see the time, if you go to the beginning, I think it's 15 plus 10. No, it's 30. Okay, so on move 1, got 30, 15. Okay, it's 30 plus 15, it looks like. He starts with 30, 15. Interesting. So going to this position here. So the computer did say it was even. Let's take a look. So rook, knight, 3 pawns against 2 pawns. It looks like white's pawns are, how do you say, not long for this world. Yeah, I mean, this is very drawish. Even if someone loses some pawns, it's pretty hard to win. I mean, white's pawns are super fragmented. So those are probably falling soon, at least 1 or 2. And then black's pawns, well, I was about to say that this is a backward pawn, so you can put a lot of pressure on it, probably win that. Yeah, I think what's happening is they're just liquidating right now with this move. It's like, well, look, I'm doubled. I'm going to cough my doubled pawn up, trade down, and I think they're going to have a draw very soon. Okay, king is really awkward, though. But I don't know. I'm highly doubtful that this could be exploited, though. Possible. More likely that blacks will than whites, though. I mean, still, someone can mess up in time pressure. You start running a pawn, you end up winning a knight or something. But then rook knight against rook is still technically a draw. But let's say the black king is cut off on the side. I could see some possibilities to press for a win, but I think this is looking like a draw. Yeah, since I just opened it up a minute ago, we're already seeing a lot of liquidation of those pawns. I think that's pretty much where they were going. There was a lot of complexity in here. Messy pawn structure, kings, especially the white king. I don't know. It looked like it was in danger at first glance, but the bishop is solidly defending the A pawn. The B rook is nicely placed, owns the B file, whereas black owns the F file, can move and it can expose the F file. Okay, he's looking at the queen and yeah, he's kind of fork. Looks like a fork against the queen and the G pawn if he wants it. It looks like ugly pawn structure, but those pawns do control a lot of squares. See, that backward D pawn remains, right? It remained until it just got traded. So interesting. It's highly complex. He does take the pawn. So we have 5 against 4 in black's favor. Black doesn't have any real damage to his pawn structure, just the backward pawn. White has tons of activity. They both have tons of activity. I don't know. And I'd say equal chances, kind of, or unclear, infinity sign. I think it's fair to say unclear, even for a computer, maybe, but for especially for a human, there's a lot going on, highly imbalanced position. So what they do is they just liquidate. Interesting. Well, it makes a lot of sense. He's using 2 against 1. He's not trying to win the H pawn right now. He figures, hey, let's just trade it and get a passed pawn immediately on H4. That's the goal. Okay. So he grabs this one, just like the Magnus game. Interesting stack with the knight. This is E6 instead of E3. Interesting. Okay, why can't he take it? Because the queen's hanging. So never mind. So just the basic discovered attack. What was the last move? So after this move on bishop d4, I mean, the only way to get off that diagonal is queen to the corner. Queen into the corner. That looks really awkward. So he figures, okay, let's get my passed pawn going. I'm giving you the e pawn. Then I have access to h3. So that was smart. I like what he did there. So Aronian, really instructive. Says my queen's cooped up. I'd rather be on h3, give you the e pawn, get my pawn rolling. And yeah, it opens the black king more, just like the white king's kind of open. It's really interesting because they both have, well, it's 2 against 1 currently. If there's a trade as he anticipates, then black will have an H pawn, extended king, or for him, queen side. Oh, sorry, king side here, queen side here. So extended king side in front of the black king, and the queen side here, well, effectively the king side where the king is for him, that's extended as well. But nobody can really get there either. It's very interesting. And those are potent passed pawns, you know, so you got to be very careful. Do they agree? Oh, something happened. Let's see. Okay, so the knight comes in, and that's what he wanted. Oh, yeah, oh, you can see, in this position, it favored white. You can see it went to 0. That's what he wanted, right? So he's got the passed pawn coming. He's got activity. And again, she'd much rather be on F1 than A8, right? So it's all about piece activity / getting past pawns while still keeping an eye on your king, obviously. Apparently, that was a blunder. You can see here, it says, you should just run your own pawn. So we have the battle of the passed pawns that are in front of their own kings. Fascinating, really fascinating. And then it says blunder to trade. Just wants to, well, now we're having a slugfest, if queen c4 check, because if you shove your pawn, then he's going to start shoving his pawn. Wow. Then he can start coming in there, win an exchange. I don't know. It's really, really messy. Anyway, queen c4 check. So then we end up in this end game that we just started at, and you can see it says 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And as expected, they just agreed to a draw. So let's go on to the other one. So basically, well, the black king got off the H file. He's hitting that. Well, he's getting this pawn if he wants. Oh, no, he can't take it yet because the rookie 1 would pin the knight. Looks like he can get away with getting the knight. So he hits the rook. Then he decides to move away from the G file. I guess he figured he didn't have anything there. Oh, he could kick the knight also and then take this pawn. Then he can just cover the, rook can swing to the G file, challenge the rook, and get the king off the H file, which is just annoying when you want it there. Then he comes to the side, kind of like in a Philidor defense. You could swing from a distance. We'd swing from behind. He's going from the side. Common technique. You check, check, check for the most part, and white can't progress either. So they agreed to a draw. Okay, let's go back. Any other games done? Carlsen did win that game. And we just have, we say the draw here, and we have an end game, exchange up end game, where white should be winning. It's 2 against 2. What is going to happen with, is this pawn falling? What's happening with the C pawn? Oh, he just resigned just now. So basically, black wants to have a trade, pawn for pawn. White chases the king back, and then I imagine he's going to take the F pawn next. Chase him back. Is there anything better? Yeah, it's over because he takes this pawn, and then he could end up, whatever the king does. Okay, I don't know, like here, for example. I think what we can do is we can swing around, probably up, and what we can aim to do is go king g4. Yeah, we can easily do that. King g4, rook h5, and if nothing else, you could just, that's an easy way to win, right? You just sack the exchange back. So let's say you wait, you come in, You wait. He can wait the other way if he wants. You just checking. Okay, you come here, and that's it. That's that. Because the king can't even come up. And easy if he wants to run, that's easy. He takes easy win too. Here, okay, just play G3 and just kind of move out of the way and whatever, just come start gaining, you could just use your king in front, something like this, You could even just not use the extra. Okay, now here, you don't want to stalemate. So what's the easiest way? I mean, you could just do this. You could just wrap around the other way, something, whatever. I mean, there's so many ways, but we do that too to avoid stalemate. So are they all done? Yep, all the games are done for the day. Now that means that Magnus and Fabi are going into, I think it's best of 3, right? So going into a tiebreak. Tiebreak 1, tiebreak 2. So game 1, game 2. Now if they, yeah. And then it goes into an Armageddon if they get 1 and 1 out or half and half out of those two. What time does it start? I can't see. Starts after quarter. Oh, so they're going straight into that. There you go. They already have it set. Fabi gets white again. So he has white 2 out of 3 of these. And then Neiman against Aronian. Let's take a quick look. I think it says it's streaming. We got. All right. So we have Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Finals 2025. All right. This is live. Okay. It's good to go. Let's take a quick look back. Can even go back to see. Just want to look at the Caruana game versus Carlsen. Okay. So we'll see how Caruana beats Carlsen in the first one. What does he end up with at the end? That was just loads of material. He's up a knight and a bishop. So basically, maybe Magnus tried to attack him and Fabiano held on. Let's see. Okay, so now looking at it also from Black's perspective. Let's look at it. See how he won this. Fabiano with Black. Okay. So let's see. Is this the same? No, I don't think it's the same position. In the first one, the kings were on the G file. Or was it the B file? No, it was the G file. Looked at it from Black's perspective. Okay. So Caruana immediately plays this kind of Sicilian structure. Well, if he had white, he would go for bishop b5, right? So he opens up bishop. The other bishop can go to c7 easily. Knight can go to comfortably to g6, c6, controlling d4 there. Can castle kingside easily. Let's see how they proceed. For white, maybe he can get f4 in, kind of like a Grand Prix attack thing. With f4. Maybe bishop can go to f3, support his center. This obviously b3 is easy to get that bishop out. Let's see what he does. What to do? The castles immediately. So it's like a b3 Sicilian or something, right? If you're trying to look for something similar, how this might manifest itself in a quote regular international chess game. Although this is becoming pretty regular. So f4, f6. Now that's quite an interesting decision. Well, when you think about it, okay, why did he do it? Think about why. You think about why, but my inclination is that he decides, okay, I want my knight on f7. I think it's more appropriately placed on f7 rather than g6. That's my guess. Now, he might be egging him on and say, go ahead and play f5. You don't really need to help him do that with tempo. I mean, you would get the e5 square. So it's interesting. He does end up on f7 immediately, though. So that was clearly his intention. So he's trying to create a little cocoon for his king. Does he even castle? No, he's not even castling anytime soon. If you look ahead, they just don't castle. Fascinating. I mean, Black doesn't castle. So f6, still waking up. Have my coffee. I went into Trader Joe's for the first time in a long time. It was very disorienting. One of them, you walk all around the store as you're picking up stuff. This was called the suburban model. It was in DC, not in a suburban area, but it was this area. And everyone was super friendly. It was interesting. Even like people shopping. The guy had like really watery eyes. They're like, oh, I'm going to smile at him. He looks like he's crying. Like, everyone's so friendly. What's going on in here in this Trader Joe's? And then the people, yeah, everyone was super nice. It was just like a weird experience because usually you're kind of anonymous when you're shopping. Anyway, I got quote, low acid coffee. So we'll see. I think my wife likes that one. So anyway, knight g3, knight f7. Okay. Bishop g4, g6. So that's interesting. That's the kind of cocoon he's making. So we have this. So we end up with f4 in this kind of Grand Prix setup. Bishop e7, d3. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I mean, why not? It's very standard, right? Just comfortable position for white. And it looks funny. It looks like a really funny setup. Something like when you play f6 early and king f7 or something, but he doesn't have to do that. He's got a knight on f7. As for being castled, I mean, he's kind of quasi castled right now. It's funny. It's interesting how he creates this fortress. It's brilliant. And I mean, keep in mind, black could easily go queenside. You can play like queen b7 and castle queenside. So your king would go from f8 to c8. You could totally do that if you want to, if the king side comes under significant danger. Takes, knight c to e5. Well, there's that e5 square. You've got your c pawn covering d4, so we can't dislodge it. You'd have to go c3 to hang the d pawn. You'd have to eventually get c3, d4 just to kick the knight. Then you'd have an isolated d pawn, and black would use the c file or something. So it's not so simple. He says, okay, you can play f5 and take g6. Then I have the option. Probably takes back with the pawn. You also have the option to take with the rook. It might be artificial, though. First of all, the bishop's hanging. Well, he gives it to him. He says, okay, you take me, I take you. Interesting. Then he'll be left with, it makes a lot of sense. Because then he's going to, well, he's forking the rooks. You got to take with the king. So basically what's happened, we have 6 against 6. And you can just see that's a super ugly F pawn. F pawn's terrible. You have a rook looking at it, a bishop looking at it, king's right behind it, diagonals under, that could come under fire. Yeah, it's not good. You can probably see the computer eval is very good for white here, +2, as if he's up 2 pawns in terms of positional power. So h takes g6. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you just keep your little cocoon here. Pawns are, I would call those softened pawns. But they're not, at least they're not, it's not isolated. Would be much worse to have it on h7. So you have g6, f6 still. And it's really hard to get to them. You have bishop covering, not super hard. Bishop covers f6. I'm just thinking through it. There is the knight e4 option, but we might chop it at that point. You also probably have f5, actually. So you can see that black has quite a bit of control then. Don't play g5. That looks very anti-positional. You never say never, but I mean, you're just giving up those squares. The knight can hop into h5, hit f6 more, f5. Yeah, I would not want to play g5. Don't see any purpose. Probably keep it there, but if anything, you play f5 if you need it. But keep in mind, the king has a lot of options. You can leave the pawns where they are. You can push. You can go to g7. Little awkward to walk into the bishop. I wouldn't be inclined to do that. But who knows? I mean, maybe you can come over to h8. You're able to use the h file now, right? Let's see. I don't know if he goes there. You can use the h file. You can hang out, or you can go to c8. Maybe just leave it there, go to b8. So lots of options for the black king. White king's already committed to g1. I mean, if he really needs to, he can evacuate, I suppose, and castle by hand on the queen side. But okay, so bishop takes. Interesting decision. Knight takes. Oh, he wants the queen check. So he wants to boot that very useful knight from f7, get his queen check. I don't know what he can do with it. Well, now you can't go back to f7 to kick the queen, but you do have rook h8 coming soon. She just figures, okay, there's nothing there. Interesting, bishop d8. Well, it makes sense because the queen is pinning the knight. Now, you got to keep your bishop covered f6, of course. Otherwise, that's an immediate checkmate. Bishop covers queen, allows knight to move if he wants. He can just chop the bishop if he feels like it. Although I'm not even sure that I do that. I kind of really like my knight there. Bishop h3. Okay, tucks his bishop back. I mean, whatever. The computer says dubious. Who cares? I mean, it's a quick game. It's human intuition. This is Magnus intuition. I'm not going to question that too much. I mean, it makes sense. Once h4, I think this is fine. Just gets out of the way of the knight, keeps his scope. Makes sense. Okay, king goes to g7. Also makes sense. So he commits his king to g7. Okay. Gets off the queen. I mean, it just makes sense. Common sense stuff, If you're in the line of fire, get out of the line of fire. A lot of my students have fallen victim to that kind of thing. I'm like, just get out of the line of fire. Here, you're in the line of fire. So the issue is that the queen's not defended, which gives white the pin. Say, okay, stop the pin. Once I got the queen, there's no more pin. It's kind of like breaking a pin, like with bishop e7 to stop the pin on bishop g5. Okay, now we're doing it in a different way by guarding the piece that's behind the pinned piece. So 94 and equal value. Queen looking at queen. Rook gf8. I mean, make again whatever it says. It makes, if I'm just looking at this on my own, okay, it makes sense, understandable. You can always look at the computer and say, oh, it wants rook h8, whatever. You can go back to h8. But the point is, he's under attack 3 times or thrice attacking. I love it. I love how Gandhi's, I love that. What was it? Gandhi's journal? Thrice. Rook gf8, queen g3, rook h8, knight f4, rook h6. Okay, so he's just covering all his weak points. Like I said, though, it's kind of scary, right? You have Magnus's, look at those beautiful pairings, 2 knights, 2 rooks, just swarming at you. The rooks can't do much, though, but still, like I said, there is softness, and Magnus obviously is trying to hit those soft points. So he's got 1, 2, looking at each one. But Caruana has a pretty stable defense here. Bishop f5. See, there's that f5. He's actually able to utilize that. Fortunately, not with the knight. Better than the bishops than the knights. And like I said, see, he doesn't want g5. Do not play g5 if you can avoid it. Then you're going to see the bishop shifting, and then the knight's going to replace it probably. Also, keep in mind d6 is weak too. But didn't really matter in the end because Caruana won. Okay, rook f8, c3. Yeah, it's a quick. I mean, he has 48 seconds. Caruana is down to under a minute. Magnus has 3 minutes. Again, with 15-second increment, which is really useful. Rook f8, c3. So well, I mentioned playing d4. Maybe he wants to kick the knight. In this case, yes, because he's got 3 defenders and Magnus has 3 attackers on the g6, essentially a focal point. Usually it's on g7, h7, like Vukovic talks about in Art of Attack and Chess, maybe f7 or compound focal points, f7, h7. But here, it's kind of like, I call it like moving up to the second story. It's like you got the little bird's nest. He moves up to the second story, so the new focal point becomes g6. f6 is less attackable. They're both equally, quote, weak. They don't have any pawns covering them, but this is the new attackable point. So he's like, well, I'm going to play d4, kick your knight, and then win by crashing through. Well, how does he handle it? Interesting. He moves his king to h8. That way, it's maybe kind of moot to attack g6. Well, he's threatening f5. But if he tries to get g6, you might have rook g8 as well, or on the next move. First of all, though, the bishop is actually hanging. So d4, you could take f5. If you take c5, you take e4. Super complicated, though, to calculate all this in time pressure. Okay, then apparently he makes a blunder. And now he does go g5. Wow. Is it because he has, I don't know, does he have like g4 takes, and then maybe f5, or maybe the idea is to like sort of tactically trap the bishop, because even though he could take, yeah, you might walk into the pin, and then if h3 to guard the bishop, he has f5 forking, and obviously the bishop can't take. Just like the other games, though, these guys are pushing their pawns a lot in front of their kings, super risky. Similar to the kind of lack of orthodoxy that you see in general with chess 960. But so once they're playing the game and they get their pieces out, it's still regular chess, you know. I think chess 960 or freestyle is the most similar to standard international chess, because once you get the pieces out, there are no different. The rules are the same. And pretty much all the other variants, you have different rules. Like you win by losing all your pieces, you win by bringing your king to the center, you win with 3 checks. I do like 10x8 Capablanca chess, or whatever it's become, Gothic chess on chess.com. Sarawon chess is slightly different, but those have yeah, once you start playing, the rules are the same, other than I love the knight rook and the knight bishop, the chancellor and the archbishop. So it's kind of like how a queen would be a knight, rook bishop. So you just have a mix of all different pieces. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, anyway, once you get started, the rules are the same. You don't have to play differently, really. You want it to be exciting and all, but you know, this could have come out, totally could have come from a Sicilian, closed Sicilian, and they're just going to play their best moves just as they would if it were a regular Sicilian or whatever opening in a standard chess tournament, currently standard chess. F takes g5, knight e6. Now that looks very interesting tactically. So last time the knight invasion's on what, e3 worked, on e6 worked. Yeah, it was actually e6 on that one. Now the first game he goes into e6 and he didn't get what he wanted, but the knights keep popping into e3 and e6. Interesting patterns going on. So what is happening? He's unleashing his queen and rook on e5. So what's the idea? That if you take with the rook, now you have, oh, this is hanging on f8 too. So it looks really good. I mean, obviously you have to chop first. So you chop f1 with check. Now you pull the rook away, and it just didn't work. He must have overlooked something. The rook check doesn't do anything because you just go king g7. Yeah, he has so much coverage. This is again, the queen's already covered. he can move the knight wherever he wants, maybe back to g6. He can play rook g6, king g7. Everything can kind of cluster around the king. The bishop is a nice counter attacker. Oh, you've got g4 still. Remember the g4 option. So there might be bishop takes rook g6, or it might just be that the queen's not there, or there's a more enough defenders for black to play g4 and just trap the bishop. So ultimately, what does he do? He finally does. Funny I mentioned that. He does get d4 in right before his last move. On the penultimate move, d4 is played. D takes d4, d takes d4, knight g6, and then he resigns. So he's just coughed up. Which ones did he cough up? He coughed up his both knights. We coughed up one knight to get well, there's that. Remember I said don't play. I said never say never, though. He did play g5 under more favorable circumstances, just based on the unique tactical scenario there. And one might think, I kind of mentioned this, like maybe rook g8. I guess he figured he didn't even need that. He just takes it immediately. Then he hits the other. I think he's just seeing some liquidation happening. So this was just, Magnus got down really low on time. So it's that's when I did my last loss, actually. So far, DC Chess, like 1 win, 1 loss. And my loss, I was doing pretty well. It was fine. It was crazy. I posted that. Both of our kings were, my king was a little awkward on H1, but I had coverage. Bishop G2, Rook G1. His king was on B6. He had a bunch of pawns shoved forward. So he was on B6 and he had pawns like here and here, something like this. And I was trying to go back with my queen and like checkmate him. Starts running around. I got like a knight check coming, queen's chasing him. It's like, get the king or die, right? Or die trying. So the king comes out to F5, then I resign because he's crashing through on G2 finally. So yeah, I it's kind of one of those things where I abandoned G2 to go out on my attack. But if it doesn't work, I went kind of intuitively, although I could have bailed out by bringing my queen back and getting an endgame that where I could have held. Probably held. It was it was equal pawn. I wouldn't have like messier pawns than it, but yeah, much better than getting mated or crashing through on G2. Anyhow, knight takes G5, it just takes back. 96. So it looks cool. I guess if he doesn't do it though, it's still -3. It still looks pretty bad for him. He's still losing the piece. So he figures, let's go all in, stack the second piece. And then he says, all right, I'm out of options. There's not even rook F8 check anymore. Cover that. Queen hits queen. No more G4, but we don't need to win the bishop. We'll take it if he gives it to us. But whereas, like, let's say he moves away somewhere, there's just not really any problem here. Just up to there's maybe E6 falls, but actually you have that's hanging. If you can cover, I don't know if you have time for King G7, play G4 takes, you might get something like taking H2. Okay, now I'll check the computer eval at the very end. Yeah, it is actually looking at King G7. So let's say something random happens, like if you just like a waiting move kind of. Is G4 even a move? It's good enough, actually. It's about the same eval, 6.5. But you can stabilize like this, and then if he takes, what are we gonna do? We're gonna take H2. And we're gonna mate 2. Where's the mate? Just take G2. No matter what, we take G2. That's cool. Okay, so that's an awesome game. Okay, and then the win. Let's look at this win quickly. The other win, we'll just focus on the decisive games for now. Okay, get rid of this. Interesting. So he's playing a quote bird. I think it should be the same. Yeah, they all have the same position. It's interesting how they analyze it together. It's pretty cool before they battle each other. Okay, F4, C5. So now we have a bird Sicilian hybrid kind of thing going on. And in a bird, you'd love to have your bishop on B2. I love to play, B3, bishop B2. So you've already got the bishop on A1, which is excellent with the F pawn. Just like with C4, you would want G3, bishop G2. So we have the same pattern. And we would like the knight to usually it would be nice if we're on G1 to get to E5. Now here, though, you have H5, some attacks actually. H5 and F5 can hit G7. So if the king castles, it's got to be aware of that. How about this knight? I would just see some kind of centralization of the knight. You can actually imagine the knight going to F3. So one knight could get to F3, and then the other could go to like F2 or G3. I kind of like that's kind of nice and tight on F2. Like Cara is not F7. So you think of those patterns. It was really nice, really nicely done by Fabiano there. Okay, so we have E4, B5. Interesting. So he's doing like a reversed ready kind of thing, like C4, B4, like in a ready opening with white. Castle, so again, these same patterns. And F6, he has the exact same thing in mind. That's cool. Exact same thing. F6, not F7. Interesting. Does he play G6? We'll see. G6, E6. He does play E6, very similar to what Fabiano did. That's cool. So B3 is played natural. And white also did the Grand Prix type setup against a Sicilian-ish position. I mean, it's like a closed Sicilian structure. You can definitely have that E4, C5, and then F4, and then like A6, B5, or Rook B8, B5. Interesting, Queen B8. So guarding B5, not committing to the push yet. Doesn't want to overextend. You might give him like the C4 square for the knight, wrap around. He would hit C5, you deal with that, then he could go back. And also, you don't really want to play D6, it weakens E6, and then it would take away squares from the bishop. Now you fix your pawn on B4. Yeah, that bishop, keep in mind, when you play B4, you really make the bishop awful. When you play D6, you also make it more awful. So let's do bishop C7, tempo on F4. That looks more natural. He actually goes queen C7. It's interesting. In the other game, what was it? It was like queen C7, bishop. Same. You see a lot of the same decisions. Fabiano ended up retreating the bishop to cover, right? To cover the queen. All right. Okay, now we're looking at it from white side. Black actually won. It's fine. We're looking at it from white side this time. Okay. So E6 is played. Well, there is that direct, there's that loose pawn on D7. So he just hits it with the bishop while developing, goes here. Okay, E6, knight, reroute. So he decides on, it's not going to F3. He's going rerouting to E2. I mean, he might be preparing like a D4 push. He's playing C4 next. Playing more like, again, if we're going to relate it to a standard chess position, see a Botvinnik type setup with like, there'll be a fianchetto like tucking here. Okay, so castles, C4. So he actually did castle this time, unlike Fabiano. Okay, B takes, keeping a stable center for white. Now in a Botvinnik, you got that weak D4 square, but he's got it adequately covered. Now he can't even get E5 and yet probably just drop D7. So there you go. See, he needs a solution for the bishop. So the bishop has some influence now. It's kind of like in a Dutch where you go, bishop E8 to H5. All right. So king H1, queen C7, just for comparison's sake. Okay, guards that one. If you play D4, he's probably thinking about D4, but keep in mind, if you do, you get a weak C pawn. It's really important to think about transformation of central structure. Anytime you transform the central structure, I'd view that as a critical position. Bishop B6, D3, knight H6, bishop F3. So there you go. The bishop just feels right on F3. Just feels like the right spot for it. Similar to a fianchetto. You don't even have to weaken yourself with G3, though. G3 is a weakening move. So if the fianchetto leaves, okay, you got a weaker king. Didn't have to move his G pawn. Now he doesn't have a luft. Maybe he'll play H3 later, but there's no issue, obviously, anytime soon. There are no rooks coming out. There's only one open file. No one's getting there right now. So he has a little time probably to make a luft. Black already Black has a luft with F6. It's a quote weakening move, but it does blunt the bishop. It does give him a luft. It does give the knight a pocket. So F6 is a super useful move. Doesn't like that one, but not a huge deal. So 97. Now he's obviously flirting with the idea of D5, but keep in mind, same thing. Even if he gets it in safely, take, then you got the isolated C pawn. Not that that's everything, but just have to keep that in mind. That would be a consequence. But he would blow open white center. He's got a rook. See, then that rook could become pretty effective. He wouldn't mind that probably. And then you got the F5 square access, things like that. I'm certainly thinking about D5, I think, here. Okay, interesting. There's that good square for the knight. Apparently that's a blunder. Why is it a blunder? If you take F6, take, you get a fork. So basically you're getting, at least I'm seeing you're getting 2 pawns and a rook for a knight bishop. Oftentimes it's okay for black to do that. That would blow open his entire king almost, though. Then it's kind of like Magnus, how he had that pawn storm going. Then maybe we'll move our G pawn. I mentioned it weakens. I mean, it is what it is. You just have to be aware of those things, that every pawn move is a weakness. You just have to know what it's weakening and whether you're willing to pay that price. How much does it cost to do that to you? So he does take. Wait a second. No, he's actually only getting 1 pawn. No, what was I thinking? What is happening? No, I didn't look at it correctly. Hold on. Let me move away from this. No, he doesn't have 2. He would have to have queen A1 or behind it, somehow be backing it up to get the 2 pawns. What is the sack? Is it? Oh, I think the idea is F5. Interesting. So now why does he need bishop takes? He needs, oh, I see. Okay, so maybe you saw the idea. So the idea already is, well, obviously the knight gets loose, right? The knight becomes loose when you take f6. So I guess the idea is, hey, your knight is attackable via f5 now, so I can snap off this pawn. You could give up the exchange. I mean, you give up the rook for it if you want. So basically, again, going into that scenario where it's two pieces for a rook and a pawn. But either way, if he takes this way, I guess it's f5. Yeah, you see, he does play f5 in a few moves. Yeah. So f5 unleashes the queen on the knight and hits the g6 knight. So that looks like the main idea there. Computer's giving a line saying knight c6 instead. And then nothing decisive is happening. It still wants f5 to press, like Fischer would do with his Fischer-Sozen line against like a Schwenningen or whatever you call it, the Najdorf. He would go f4, f5, hit d5 more. But it just gets a squeeze over here on the king side. So just pressing, you know. White's starting to press with a space advantage. So we have the bishop takes, pawn takes. Either way, you'd play f5. So we grab this, then play f5. Yeah, so you're just getting the piece back. Interestingly enough, it doesn't like the capture. It wants the build-up. Because with the idea is you'd rather take the H knight for free than the F knight and give up the pawn. And you have the same, I think that was about the same structure that Fabiano had. All the E pawn was gone though. It was just F6 and G6. So a lot of similarities in terms of how they handled this unique position. I don't know what, it doesn't say which one it is right now. Does it say somewhere? Position 305 of the chess 960 option. So queen takes, knight takes. Okay. Yeah, so it likes knight g3. And then let's say he wants to, quote, save this knight. Oh, he does have this one. Then you can sack on f4. Oh, that's cool. They'll get it back. But see, you don't have to give up your f pawn. Or do you? Well, now he can take, actually. But it's in a different way. Also, you have bishop h. No, you have bishop h5. Yeah, so you can't even win the exchange there. So that means he's got to deal with that somehow. Like, I don't know, like here maybe. And then you can take or something like that. Come in or whatever you want to do and put a lot of pressure on him. And we have a pawn and an exchange, so winning position. And a really not so happy bishop on b6. Pretty bad bishop. I mean, you can reroute. But yeah, that's a winning position materially. So I guess, so the idea is basically you could have kept your f pawn and gone for the other knight. The idea, yeah. So, if he doesn't do that, so for example, let's say he retreats, then you probably saw this knight h5. So you're utilizing your f pawn, you're squeezing them, kind of a mating that you're creating here too. Definitely. I mean, because after something like queen takes h6, you've got a knight, a queen, you've got so many weak squares, you're hitting f6, and you've got the f5 pawn, and this actually would fail immediately to queen takes f6 check, block, and mate. So yeah, he's got him in a bit of a mating net. Not super tight, but he's starting to weave the net in that line. But here, definitely not. You can see it's totally different. Because now that you take on g6 and he takes back with the pawn, there's no mating net at all. So he has kind of a similar kind of defense that Fabiano had. Actually, Fabiano came under more fire, and it was against Magnus Carlsen. So didn't have the e pawn in that scenario. So yeah, he's got a pretty nice fortress there. Let's see how he tries to break in. Well, queen activates. Okay, he just goes for an endgame. Didn't think he had anything. I don't see it. Yeah, because g6 is here. Doesn't give white any checks as the other line would. So really, he just missed his shot there. He had to do the other line. So he trades down. Knight f7. There's your g3. Now he creates more of a kind of, quote, normal fianchetto. He can play king g2 if he wants. He goes king g1 because that allows him to get off of the bishop. I'll move it back over here again. I just didn't want to look at it. I wanted to figure it out for you as well. We have a little, as you can see, there's a bit of rigidity here on d3. And again, well, even if you could get this in, you wouldn't do. No way. I'm not going for this. Even if you could get it in safely, let's say there were a knight there and the knight weren't there. Like, let's say you can trade, but now it's, now again, you're making your pawns so brittle on c4 and e4. You'd rather have one brittle pawn, at least it holds the two pawns. So black certainly would like to smash that. Maybe black wants to actually reroute and go to d4, stuff like that, because that is a glaring hole on d4. Maybe white can, remember the computer recommended a4 earlier. Maybe you can do some stuff like that, get the rook on the file or something. Yeah, I mean, white's up in exchange for what? Just up in exchange for no, sorry. It's two pieces. So he has yeah, he's up in exchange. You both have 6 pawns. So I mean, this bishop's pretty bad though. So is the b6 bishop. I mean, he's just up in exchange. I think he's doing well here. Nicer pawn structure for black though over here. Black is way more fluid in his structure. Again, d3 looks ugly. Bishop on a8 isn't doing much, but he might play like something like f5 and try to chip at that. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. It's up a clean exchange. There's a really good knight on e5 though. Let's see. Yeah, computer's only giving a slight edge to white, meaning it thinks black has a good compensation. That is a beautiful knight on e5. And we can move the bishop away. Good structure. Yeah, I mean, pawn structure for sure is better. Also, an interesting thing is whenever the rook goes to b1, you can utilize the two bishops on c6 and c7, assuming they can't be bothered. I don't see it happening. Then the rook is kind of rendered ineffective because the whole point of taking a file with the rook is to invade. If you can't utilize his rooks, then black gets to play around with his pieces, just to maneuver with the knight and all that. So rook h8, h4. Now it's really giving him nothing at this point. So then he turns it into something and flips it in his favor, probably in time pressure. Okay, bishop e2. I mean, once they get to time pressure. Bishop a5. He improves the bishop. King improves. Oh, that's way better. The quote bad, the bad bishop becomes very strong on d4. It's anchored. He wants to come in. Smashes that open. Beautiful. Takes, g takes toward the center. Yeah, you give him a pass pawn, but you also have a target on g3. Not going anywhere the pass. Maybe h5 like in the other game, where the king side pawn's pushed in front of the king. Okay, d4, bishop takes. Oh, okay, so it's one of those things where they're up in exchange, but your position is just deteriorating. So like, okay, I'll just give it. Like if there's a knight on the 6th rank, you're like, okay, you sack the exchange to have a beautiful knight on the 6th rank. I'm just going to give the exchange back and be okay at least. So we have 4 against 4, and ultimately what it's come down to is black just has nicer pawn structure. Well, you've got 3 connected pawns here. Those are nice pawns. G3 could be attacked. Again, there's an H pawn. That's all white's got going. G3 pawns backward, right? Maybe if you trade pieces off later on the end game, you can see a king coming in. Like, I don't know, say there's 1 piece left each or something. And then tries to win the G pawn. C pawn, like I said, because he played D4, that's a target. So if the pieces go away, then I can chop that pawn. And then also then I can move and play. Well, you can move it immediately and play E5. That's the goal. If you can fork him. So knight, well, there you go. E5 check's coming. So knight checks. King goes away. King E3, King E7. Just nice placement for black. Just got to worry about those pawns rushing him soon. Okay, knight recenters, rook g8, hitting that. There's that g pawn. So you're probably going to see some combination of attacks on the g pawn, attacks on the c pawn, maybe the a pawn, and then you're going to see some central rollers going on, probably king activation, things like that. We're probably going to see, and you're seeing knight h6 too, so you can utilize the g4 square, stuff like that. Okay, rook's guarding. Here comes the knight. Knight d3. King f6. He's kind of flexible. He doesn't have to play knight g4, but it's available to him. Okay, e5. There it goes. G4. So it's basically my 2 pass pawns against your 2 pass pawns. He's probably figuring, hey, I've got G5, oops, coming. But he moves the knight, quote, hangs it, but it's not really hanging because the pin G pawn. So then he'd be up the exchange himself. Okay, check, King E7, Knight G4, which was apparently a big mistake. Does Rook G4. It's kind of an awkward looking move. It says that's best. Well, here come the pawns. Yeah, the pawns are just more effective than white's pawns. They're more advanced. There you go. Now we got the B file. Too much at play here. So white's getting low on time. Black has 220. White has 44 seconds. And you're seeing he's under tons of pressure too. This is where he could start to collapse. Well, apparently he's already losing. But yeah, those pawns are so strong. Oh, he wins that H pawn. So he takes away the force of the connected pass pawns for white. Probably blockade if you need, but you can't really go G6 because you take F6 currently. And the rook invasion's coming and all that. Looks pretty bad. And then you can't go F3 yet, I think, but soon enough. Well, if you get rook in and rook check on D2, chase the king, then you can play F3 without losing your E pawn. You might play it tactically. Knight g6 defends, recentralizes, and blockades the g-pawn. Very useful move. Bishop h5 tries to remove the blockader. Counterattacks, like in the Magnus Fabi game, they keep counterattacking each other. I think it was the first one. Knight d5 check, king d6. Where's the second game? That was the second game. The first game became more one-sided for Fabi by the end. Rook takes f4 after a close game. Knight takes f4 check. Knight takes f4. Okay. So what's happening here? It's down the exchange. So he offers this pawn, but because it's taboo. What happens there? Interesting. He's going to lose the pawn anyway. So, okay. So he wins the exchange. Yeah, that's the point. He's destroying black's, destroying black's pawns, but he has to pay a price. Black got that pawn for free on h4. White had to pay a price. He's down the exchange. He says, okay, you can take my e pawn. I take your c pawn. So he holds on to the c pawn. Hits it again. There you go. Trades down. He's got, and then we saw that winning end game. Just going to become a winning end game. Got to be careful. Don't trade off all the pawns because rook against knight only is a draw, theoretically. Not too hard to hold that. If you know you can do that, you can move the king to the side of the back rank, and then knight just goes next to it, check, check, check. Anytime he tries to set up a mate, check, 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 and then you can check that. You can check that out if you don't know. A4, rook h3, check, king back, a5, knight f6, rook a3, and that's falling. And he throws in the towel. Yeah, 2 against 1. Exchange up. Yeah, that was nice. And let's look at the other win. Oh, we already looked at the other one. And that was, yeah, just very interesting. See, structure was similar. In that game, I think the pawn was just on e6 instead of g7 because it took back here. So again, it looked like in that game, see, who was it? Who had black? Parham had, it looked like a safer king than Fabi has here, but Fabi really defended extremely well, I think, because Magnus was putting some heat on him here with the 2 scary looking knights and the queen. The bishop never got to do anything though. The rooks just got traded on the f file, but it's scary pressure here. He has to be super careful. Magnus is looking for any shot he can get, and he does. I mean, bishop f5 is kind of a shot. Well, it's not hanging, but just, yeah, if it were hanging, it would be more of a shot, like an unexpected move. But he's just, that's expected. It's pinned. He's provoking g5 again. And he only plays g5 when it's good. Let's see. He did play it here, and then well, it looks like it says he's already winning. I think because the g4 stuff. Let's just say he had retreated. Would it have been g4? Is that the way he would go? I think it, does g4 work? I think it might. Then what do we do? Do we go rook b? What do we do? Oh, we could just take it because of the exposure on h2. And good thing your bishop guards your queen. If he wants to, if he wants to take and trade down, you keep the knight. And if he wants to take here, then we take with check. It's not a mate, but it's bad. And then we get a fork and we take the knight with check. That's pretty nasty. Okay, oh, queen can hold here, so you can't take yet. There's a bishop check. There's not even a pawn block. Force the queen trade. You can't take back with a knight or move away, give him too much material, and then you win the end game easily. Oh, you take with check. Beautiful, beautiful. And then take the queen, check, king up, and you're a queen. So nice, nice. Down exchange, up a queen. Okay. So now looking at the current round. Oh, are they? Let's see. They probably started. They do the tie break. Oh, it's over. They just played. So Magnus advanced. I guess Fabiano's knocked out then, huh? And then Aronian beat Neiman. Interesting. And as for the previous round, we pretty much looked at them. At least we glanced at them. Quarterfinals game 2. I think I just looked at the final position. I don't think we looked at how Sindaron beat. I haven't really heard his name pronounced in broadcast or something. I don't recall. Beat Parham. Let's see. Kamer defeated Argeisen. Yeah, I think we didn't look at those ones actually. Did we? Let's see. How much did we see? Let's just flip through these. Just flip through the rest. Oh, this is the one where no, ready thing, they both did that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You push the pawns far away from your own king, you open up both bishops, so not too much risk there. You can easily guard the pawns. Once you start pushing a lot of pawns, then the risk is that they would leave weaknesses in their wake and trying to call it getting around the facade of the Western movie set. So e6, e3, f5. So that's what Magnus did in the first round. Something got the same structure. Knight cd3, knight f6. That's really interesting how he approaches this. Computer likes it. Got the computer stamp of approval. I'm going to take off the eval though. So take off the computer lines. So he's going e6. Okay, let's see. So essentially, again, they're relying on these heuristics of positions they know, structures they know. Well, first of all, they're just getting their bishops out. But probably, when black plays this, they're thinking of a queen's Indian structure. If you play f5, it's like a Dutch with bishop b7 / a8. That's kind of useful on a8 though, because you can go queen g7, or sorry, b7, and you can make a battery immediately to hit g2. Maybe shove your h pawn. And I love to shove my h pawn when I see that. If you watched my streams, I love to do that early. And then they usually let me get to h5. I say, okay, fine. It's like a Carl Khan. You go h4, h5 against h6, right? And the bishop f5 line. So you get that thing in. If they let you keep going, you might keep going. And sometimes you have to pin, and they have to give up their G pawn for the H pawn, open up the half open file, get the diagonal pressure. So he just does that idea here, just runs the H pawn, utilizing that pressure. So it's kind of, you decide F pawn, H pawn. If you push the F and the H pawn, you might get a little rigid in there. They'll go like F5 and stop you, and then like weak, the knight's going to come into G4, maybe stuff like that. So you probably choose. You probably won't see him going H4 unless he has a really good reason. So he's probably sticking with this pawn. You might see E3 or something, a little more central control. You might see the knight coming out. Bishop B3 or C2, probably C2. And for black, yeah, he can go for F5. He can challenge the bishop anytime he wants. You'll probably see some central pushes by black if he wants to. He has a nice tight position. He doesn't make any more pawn moves other than G6. Interesting. He brings the knight out to F6. So he does go for F5. Computer like the H5. Interesting. I mean, he could do the same thing, right? He could do that idea as well. Run the H pawn. Okay, knight F6 gets aiming at E4 like Magnus did, but it's just not as effectively. So H4. Because yeah, Magnus certainly got a good position out of that opening. 95, make him worry about D7 a little bit. He might have some like G4 tricks later on. Knight F7 to trade him off. Doesn't like it. Trade. So it's kind of like he's like going for equality at this point. Well, equal chances. Then he could start to press maybe for black, try to press on the diagonal. Okay, he gets H5 in. Just ignores him. Says, all right, I'm okay with you going H6. I go G6. We stay sealed. And hopefully that pawn gets picked off from black's perspective later on. At the very least, it just doesn't allow him to use the rook. I don't see really a rook lift doing much. Unless he has a sack on G6 with like maybe later if the knight moves. No. Could be sacks. Could play D4 if you feel like it. If you want to expand. Then you're kind of focusing more on the center and queen side. Could play across the board, really. Let's see. You get the knight out. Okay. We'll take the bishop here. Why not? C6. Now, why do you think you did it, though? Knight G5, maybe. It's pretty annoying. I guess you didn't want to see knight G5. But now white's got a good bishop here. Go C6, blunts the bishop. Opens the queen, maybe bishop C7. I just don't see where is black's play coming from. Probably E5, I guess. It's just not clear. He ends up playing C5 on the next move. Okay, white punches at it with B5. Then he plays C5. He's trying to keep it pretty closed against the bishops, but the bishops have their diagonals. I think it's very comfortable for white. The rook isn't doing anything on H1, but the pawn could be annoying. It's a thorn in black's side. Difficult to press, but let's see what he does. He actually plays G4. Looks like probably prematurely. But it's a creative move. Well, you can't take back with the knight because queen h8's mate. So he's exploiting the diagonal. But again, these guys are really opening up their kings a lot. It's interesting. There is an h6 pawn, but at least black's king is tight. You just can't move your knight though. Yeah, I think he should have gone bishop f6. Let me go back really quickly to that moment where he went knight f6. How about just bishop f6 instead? Yeah, you can see it's thicker. That's the one that it wants. Just deal with it, because that bishop, well, I think it's the fact that he let the pawn get into h6. Like then in hindsight, you wish you had gone bishop f6. Just deal with it. Then after you trade, then the knight's comfortable on f6, and then h4, h5, h6 has less impact because he ends up winning. We'll see. We'll see to what degree he's able to actually use the pawn on h6 later on. Well, he's able to use it for now to the degree that it doesn't allow the knight to take back on g4. So it's taboo. Looks like it's hanging, but it's not. Okay, e6 is undefended by a pawn, so it's a weak pawn, guarded though adequately by the rook for now. Tucks back. It says it's even now. Well, there you go. There's black's play. So he has the knight. Oh, the fact that the bishop has moved away from the diagonal, which allows d5 to occur now. Because previously you would have had same idea as the hanging G pawn that you, or the so-called hanging bishop that you can take. If they're like d5 take bishop takes, you can hang your bishop on d5. Can't take his queen h8 mate. So now that the bishop has moved away, there's no more ability to take the d pawn twice. And then he just runs the d pawn. And now what if he were to take? How bad is that? What's happening here? I think it's just busting open lines, and this king is awkward for white. Do you just take back, or do you have anything else? Well, if we have time for bishop f6, we can pin the pawn. Can we move the knight? Knight invasion. Oh, we can do that. So if he takes, we can hit the queen like this. Queen goes somewhere, hits the knight. Okay, we ignore the bishop. We can fork them now. Interesting. You can also, I was looking at, if nothing else, you had this, but I noticed there's a fork. So not queen there. Okay, let's do, I don't know, queen here. So for example, now, if you take, they might take e4. I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to take on c5 and say bishop takes, okay, queen hits the rook, something like this. And then here you go, boom, queen f4. And black is looking really good here. Just don't get mated on g7, but you can always, okay, this is not going to be attacked anytime soon on f6. You can tuck back if you need to. Can't even boot the queen, really. Rook h4, you take, you still cover. Got checks coming. Yeah, it's pretty ugly. I think the computer likes black here. Says it's about even. Oh, because he is able to dislodge the knight. Yeah, it likes white attack. No, it's pretty even. Most lines look at 0, minus 0.3, plus 0.3. It's about even. Was there something better he could have done here? So in this position, yes, there was. There's that hanging knight again. So you can fork these guys. So rather than take c5, you get your fork. And you can't take because you haven't, that's the Napoleon checkmate. Napoleon with his big shoulder pads getting in his way, focusing too much on vanity and compensation. So f4, 94, rook h3, bishop f6. Okay. Oh, wow. So black was doing quite well. He just missed some stuff. And he's also up on time. Did he move quickly trying to stay up on the clock? He got 8:23 to 8:30. Well, yeah, he moved quickly. I mean, it's a reasonable looking move, bishop f6. So basically, though, when he doesn't take, same thing in mind, though, of bishop f6 to get this back. And reasonable. He just missed knight g3. That would have been cool. Okay, well, that's another line. Okay, bishop f6. He might not have gotten there. Knight g6. Yeah, that's saying equal. Makes sense. Use that bishop pair, but the bishop a1, he smothered the bishop on a1, which is useful for black. Now you might say, quote, yeah, bishop on f6, quote, bad bishop, but he is holding off the a1 bishop. And again, as we saw, he does have e5. Now, very direct idea now with the queen against the rook of the discovery. We've seen a lot of discoveries in this tournament. Yeah, it says black's doing pretty well now. It's a fine game for him. It's an equal-ish game, throughout equal chances. Okay, rook d8. A lot of jockeying for position here. So let's always take a step back and just look at the structure. So he's still got the h6 pawn. But it's good that what black obviously realized that. He finally did extricate himself from this problem that he had mostly on the diagonal by ultimately getting his bishop to f6. And he plays e5 at the wrong moment because the idea is strong, obviously. It would have been stronger to hit the rook when you do it. But he still gets it in. What's the problem with it? He wants just a nice build-up with queen d7. What's the problem with e5? Well, now white takes the diagonal. So you can see he's sticking all his pawns on dark squares. He's really weak on light squares. And black has white has an uncontested light squared bishop. Very uncomfortable. There it is. Wins an exchange. A lot of these games are coming down to exchange up. Trying to win with an exchange up, maybe cough it back up again. Queen b7. Now his advantage is increasing. I mean, he's up in exchange. It's going to be up in exchange if he wants to take f7. It's tying him up in the meantime. No need to rush. Even if, even here, the rook is so stifled in here that he can't even move the rook away. So you may as well just leave it there for now. Okay, pretty active pawns though. Well, wait, what if he takes here? Oh, that's already prepared. It's already shown this. Okay, smash it open. Then you grab that. Then, okay, so you're leaving him with this massive pawns, but the king is really exposed behind them. So many scenarios, a lot of similar scenarios of the kings having all these pawns pushed. Although in those scenarios, it was intentionally like a king was on g7 or h8 or something, and they'd push the pawns in front of the king. Here, yeah, g file is under control, but white's up in exchange. So yeah, there is an imposing pawn center, but it looks feeble. Ultimately, it could be destroyed. So f5 actually, this actually happens. We have invasion. What's coming next? Rook g7, try to collapse f5, just invasion. Rook f7, well, queen f7 check, all that's coming. Can't hold him off. Yeah, that's just lost. Now here's an example where the rook invades on the 7. Like I said, the other one, the rook never got to invade. The bishops were available to keep the rook out of invasion points on the b file. We've got that invasion anchored in by the pawn. And like I said, let's see the purpose of the pawn. Well, it tied black down. It led to the anchoring of the rook. And if the rook takes h7, we're very close to promoting. So that pawn was really a hero throughout the game. It's kind of a sleeping giant. But it's really, yeah, there you go. Now this might just be the winning factor. Either he goes for the mate or he just gets a promotion. Oh, and then that's what we saw. And the nice little zigzagging maneuver here. And like I said, you either win. Oh, either way you win the queen or you get a mate. Because I was looking at king back and then rook f7 wins the queen. And then you're going to promote immediately, 2 moves later. Then there's also, what was it? And then either way you go rook, oops, you go rook down. If queen goes up, you go rook f6 and pin it. King here, I mentioned the rook f5 mate. Really nice game. That's an interesting game. And last but not least, did we look at the whole? I think I just looked at the end. I think we just pulled that up. And let's see, is it coming through here? Is it going? Not sure if it's actually going or not. It says started streaming a little over an hour ago. It's frozen, but no, I think it's good. No, it just doesn't have the play button. I think it's good. All right, so at least we got it out there. It'll turn into a video. It'll turn into a recorded video after the stream. A lot of the stuff, I mean, I like it. Why not? I would do it too. C4, F5 stuff. So reverse Sicilian type stuff or F5 Dutch type setups. It's interesting. They're all kind of going for that. I mean, black is trying to balance things and play for something. It's just interesting that it goes immediately to minus 1.4, as we can see. Computer says that was a mistake. You should have gone C5. That's boring though. Let's see why it's apparently bad. You did lose, but I don't know if it's attributable to this move. B4, B6, bishop A4. Okay, there's that D7 pawn again. C6. Oh, and then we have well, I just want to see how Carlsen edged out Caruana too. Let's just briefly look at this. And then white makes a mistake and apparently spoils his advantage. And that's the thing. Like, come on, does white just have a massive advantage just because of F5? Wait, what was the exploitation apparently? And there's that bishop F6 first. Good lesson. Well, he didn't even play H4, H6, but it just makes sense. I mean, it's a strong bishop. Let's challenge it. Bishop on D, I had nowhere else to go anyway. I mean, white gets an initiative on the queen side, but I mean, anything could happen here, b6, chip at the pawn, open your bishop. Maybe you get, who knows, maybe you end up getting like g5, g4, like Magnus did. I think anything could happen there. Could just, yeah, so it still prefers white a bit, but black just needs to fight back in the center. Again, playing for that e4 square, but you're going to have to punch the center to open up the bishop. Remember the other game, he ended up playing like c5, and then d5, d4 stuff happened. And just didn't time his e5 break properly. Knight f3. Yeah, just a comfortable game for white, but we'll see how black can try to punch back. Knight f e5. Bishop c7 makes sense. Just gotta deal with your bishop on a8. Curious to see what he does. Well, there you go, bishop e7. Curious to see what he does with that bishop. That's the main problem here for black. Yeah, and white doesn't really have any problems to solve right now. It's what, where's his play going to come from? Maybe c5, give him the d5 square for now. But if you think he's going to play c5, you might want to stop him. But I think if he does it now, the knight will be undermined, right? So you take the knight, just take toward or away from the center. I think either way is okay. Probably even away is fine. This is not so comfortable. But yeah, you can certainly take toward the center too. Let's see. I'm curious. What does it say there? Yeah, it likes toward the center a little bit more. 0.5, 0.4. Yeah, it's kind of oscillating as well. It's liking B takes now. I mean, normally you take toward the center. Taking away, though, opens the bishop and the rook. That's why I'm kind of liking away as well. D5, if takes, what is going on? What happens with D5? Oh, D5, you take on the sun. You win the exchange. Therefore, this is the move. And then just chop. And white's just kind of eating up the center. Same thing. You get the no, he has D5 now. No, it's really murky. What's that? Anyway, we don't have to look at the computer moves too much. But yeah, that looks pretty good for white. It's just destroying the center. Okay, so bishop e7. Yeah, I know in a lot of these analyses, you'll have the hosts are giving their analysis, but of course, they always have the computer running, which has its pros and cons. I mean, you're going to get accurate analysis that way, but it's also good just to see the human ideas, as long as they complement the computer analysis with their genuine human thoughts. D5, as genuine as it can be, tainted by the computer analysis. Yeah, for better, for worse. So he goes D5, creates a stonewall type setup. And of course, the intention is to fill in this hole with a pawn. And he allows it. Well, then you'd rather have a knight there, but the pawn would squeeze black as well. So he doesn't decide to take it yet. Queen d8. Rook lift. There's our rook lift. So we really have this can be treated as, of course, as a stonewall. We have d5 and f5 against the d4, c4 opening, against the queen's gambit. Usually we don't like to play b6. You'll usually see black keep it the pawn chain, because c6 is a soft point. You can always take, come into c6, things like that. b5 can demolish the pawn chain. So yeah, usually, even though it makes the bishop bad, but like I said, usually have this pawn chain, and then the bishop goes to h5 if they really want to extricate the bishop from its prison. Yeah, it's a very comfortable type of position. Once you have this queen's gambit and the d pawn is exchanged for the c pawn, black has lost a core part of his center. And you just see the natural advantage. Just like when I was in high school, I was getting into competition, I would always play the king's gambit, e4, e5, f4. And what you usually have is, they often wouldn't even try to keep the pawn. You would just have them take and you get it back. And you just end up like, okay, they've lost their e pawn. I just have a really comfortable center, whether it's d4, e3, like the Immortal game that Anderson got that. Anderson got that structure. Or you can have e4 and d4. So here, you could just play e3, for example, in this position, or nothing. But you can always toss in e3, and it's just really comfortable. Now, the knight could go to d5, but you see you really have no piece problems here. Bishop is blocked by your pawn currently, but it's playing with these pawns on d4, c4, makes it harder to carry out an effective c5 as well. So just really comfortable edge for white, but black is going to punch back. So we'll see what he does. Supports the pawn. It's got clearly going for dark squares. Bishop tucks back. So there you go. That's the question about the bishop. He reroutes the bishop. That's his answer. There you go. All of white's pieces are engaged. Black's bishop is really the problem on b7. That's really his main problem, and white has more space in the center. He has two central pawns against one. He has a pawn in the fourth rank in the center. Black's is off center. Still has influence over the center before. So very comfortable. Again, now, it only says 0.5, but as you see now, it says minus 1.3. So you can see it quickly changes in white's favor in a lot of cases. Okay, rook here. H6. There you go. Nice solid pawn chain. Beautiful. Look at that piece placement. This is a good example. You can use this against a stone wall, this type of play. Who's called me? Oh, that's weird. Like one ring. Okay, knight f3. Knight takes f4. Now it's funny that it doesn't like that, because most of us would like to keep our pawns intact. Although you often do see that this could be effective. Well, it actually makes a whole lot of sense here because you open up the rook, and yeah, beautiful piece placement. So everything's just engaged, and this guy you could play h5 maybe, start looking at g6, or just play rook g3 and look at g7 immediately. Yeah, it makes sense. And you've got the knights against the bishops. This creates a more locked up pawn structure, so it favors the knights there. Knight takes looks fine, but what the hope for Sindarov is that he would take, and then he would just have one knight against one awful bishop. And beautiful. I mean, that knight's so strong on e5, and the bishop's awful. No, I guess he can still achieve his c5 though. But first, he'd have a crisis here. Let's see. I'm sure it really likes white here. Yeah, +1. Say he guards the pawn. Invasion. Let's say he gets c5 in, for example. Take. No, you just take. I think you just take it. That's it. Just move your queen. B file. D file. It's very comfortable. You have a pawn with a great position. The bishop does free itself, but at the price of a pawn. Yeah, but you can see it doesn't give white as decisive an edge anymore. So this would have been really comfortable. E takes f4. Sure, there's nice light d pawn, but we can deal with that. Okay, rook d1. Let's see how he ends up turning this into victory. Okay, well, he's probably gonna get the pawn back. Yeah. Look at those beautiful squares. Reminds me of a famous Alicante game, a famous Capablanca game with the Queen's Gambit. And Alicante got, yeah, both of them. They both have really nice games like this, where the b5 and f5 are played. I think in both cases. At least b5, c6. I think in one of them, at least they have f5. Beautiful squares on the dark squares there for the knights to invade on. Or you can, play rook c5 and double sometimes or whatever. A lot of pressure on the backward pawn, the dark squares. Check. And there we go again. Exchange up, right? Keeps happening. Can't go rook g3, unfortunately. Nice. e4 is played. Let's move the computer up. Invasion's coming. The queen. Boom, e5, beautiful. Tempo. Hits that weak pawn on c6. All he's got going is a passed b pawn. There, we finally got that. I was looking for that because the bishop was there. I want that rook g3, of course. And just like the h6 pawn held g7, the h5 pawn holds g6 to anchor in the rook. Can't stop it if he wants it. Yeah, he's toast now. Trades down. Now that's beautiful. Because the one scary pawn was the b pawn, but he trades it. It looks like he's going to win it. And that's that. And wouldn't that be great if he just ends up with the bad bishop? But if he doesn't take the e5 knight, then it's just going to rain terror. Beautiful. Now it's against the other bishop. Check. So not as ideal, but easy enough. What was it an accuracy at all? Not really. It was fine. He didn't need knight g6. Oh, I was going to say he didn't need it immediately. He doesn't want the bishop to take h5. So what he does is he's like, okay, fine, I can handle your dark squared bishop. I'd rather play against your light squared bishop probably, but we trade that off and I get to keep my h pawn, which has now become a really strong g pawn, anchoring my rook. King is coming into play. Annoying e and f pawns though. Fixes in place. picks off the pawn, and that is just about where we saw the win. That's it. And then, yeah, he kicks the king back, and you're going to see, I think he's just going to take the pawn. And then I'm probably going to see the swing. I don't know. Like I said, a random move. Um, it's saying here. Oh, he can't take because the skewer wins it. So what does he do? Let's say, like I said, here. Um, what's next? He's just kind of in a zugzwang. Can we check him back? Yeah, that's the idea. And that's game, like I said, and game over that we looked at. Cool. Okay. Now I just want to quickly see before we finish the. Oh, wait. It was tiebreak round one. So first time. So the first game, quarterfinals game one, Bobby won. What was it? Quarterfinal tiebreak one. And then Magnus won. Oh, right. It's not, it's if they were tied going from game one and game two. So they still have two tie breaks, I think. Yeah. Because tiebreak one, Fabiano lost, but he has a chance to win the next round. So if he draws the next round, then Carlsen goes on, he gets knocked out. So Magnus Caruana needs the win in the next round. How decisive was this? Oh, those are really nice knights. There was not an exchange difference in this game, though. Most of them are exchange differences. Okay, so let's go back to Magnus's side. Look at how the winner does it. Off the eval for the eval. Okay, interesting. Kind of typical in 960. They often like to do that. It's like Magnus saying, "Hey, the cool thing about 960 is you can play G5 and still win. G5, H5 and still win. Um, you know, you can do stuff like this, right?" And again, it's not close to the king. You've committed here, which means you're probably not going to cat. That's the only thing I think about. Sometimes I'm like, I would like to do this move to push twice, but maybe because I want the option of going queen side, or in this case, king side, sometimes I'll just move it up once. But here is pretty much, he's less likely to go to the king side, but he'll either stay in the center or go queen side. So you'll probably, I would imagine, you'll see Fabiano not moving his queen side pawns as much because he wants to reserve the option, unless he's going straight out, all out on the flanks and wants to stay in the center. But my guess is he's going to commit to the king side pawn pushes and leave the king, be ready to have a shelter on the queen side. Okay, let's see. So these are all kind of loose, because if you castle king side, you're going to abandon some of these pawns, like the C pawns. The B pawns are not guarded at all. The other ones are well guarded. So I think you might see some attempts at undermining those pawns. Let's see. See, he's playing a little more modestly, creating an imbalance, saying, okay, I can castle there more safely, and I want to see if your G pawn gets overextended. I can always punch at you with H5 too. He punches at it with F5. Interesting. Well, there's hitting that B pawn with a mate threat. You got to watch out for that. I've won a lot of games just for fun like that, where I got the quick attack on the weak pawn. And what happens is, you might be threatening mate, and they have to deal with it. Then you end up like winning something else. So it's kind of a fork, like attacking something with the mate threat that they may not expect. But with chess 960, you've got to expect the unexpected, things like that. Okay, F4. Then he just busted. Remember, I talked about when you have these pawns like this, you play E5, you end up with the isolated pawn. It was like a C pawn in that case, C5 pawn or something. But he's willing, that doesn't mean you never do it though. So he knows he's taking that on, but look at usually what happens is you have a weak pawn, but you have a ton of dynamic play. I mean, look at that beautiful piece placement out of the opening. I'm really liking Magnus's piece placement. Castle's queen side. And we're seeing white go queen side as well. I mean, king side looks really like bereft, right? You don't want to go there. So bishop d5, bishop h6. Well, there's hitting that point. So he says, okay, let's just castle, ensure that's well guarded, the g2 pawn. Now we're having some sorts of trades in the center. It's kind of funny if you take it this way. It's nice. I'm sure he was tempted, but except for the fact that why is it losing? Why is that losing? It looks funny, but you can't do it. What am I missing? Pressure here, pressure here. What is it? Knight in? I think of why says it's losing to take with the knight instead of the queen. Is it 94? That's hanging. And then that goes back. I don't know. I don't know. Why is it losing? Trying to figure that out. It's interesting. It says that black, I think it said, did it say black's winning in this line? Yeah, 94 is the win. And I was looking at knight takes, pawn takes. Oh, so interesting. Okay. So when you take this, there's that pin. Now the knight has to go back. It's kind of like bishop to get to cover the queen. If the knight goes back, then you just, to cover the queen, then you snatch the A pawn, and that's really strong. And then, I mean, I think we're gonna see a knight wrapping in or something. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. Oh, and then if he wants to play rook b1 to guard, then we have knight a3 check, or you can collapse. D2 can collapse as well. Check. Oh, you're winning the entire rook now with mate. Beautiful. That's mate. That is, never mind. I hallucinated. You can't take the rook. You take, because I was looking at taking the rook. Yeah, that's nice. So you can't do that one. Queen has to take, and we end up, and then we have the queen trade, and then we actually do get the cool looking knights, but in a queenless middle game. So basically, you know, once we start trading some more minor pieces, then we're approaching the end game. But we only had one minor piece, you know, one pair of minor pieces that shut off the board. So we'd call that a queenless middle game. Like typically, you know, we have a trade of queens on the D file. Okay. Every other piece is there. We call it a queenless middle game if you weren't aware of that. Okay. Rook e5 hits the knight. So that looks a little scary. Good thing is the bishop guards the knight on c5. It's giving black a tiny edge. I mean, look at that. Really, you know, it's interesting. I guess Caruana figured, hey, let's trade. And I have a slightly better structure than you. Isolated, we both have an isolated H pawn. There's an isolated F pawn on a half open file. That's something, right? You can at least claim that's something to work with. Not a ton, but it's there. 94. So there we're hoping to trade off and then take back with the F pawn. But I mean, ultimately, why is it like black a little bit? I mean, black just has, I mean, black has 4 pieces mobilized. But the bishop on b1's kind on a g1 is kind of mobilized, you know. It's like a rook hanging out on f8 or g8. You know, it's still out there. It's a long range piece. So you have the luxury sometimes of just sitting back. Although you'd rather probably have the rook on g1. Maybe we want the rooks on g1, f1, but then where's the bishop go? So it's just kind of an easier game for black to play rather. And you have a pawn on f5, which does give black a space advantage, making it hard, for example, to play e4. Although it is mentioning that move. What is this? Then he would come back and pick it off anyway. 3 against 2. Yeah, he'd just cough it up. Actually, now white might be the one with the bad pawn structure. Take, take, take. Oh, that's hanging. Yikes. Can't do that. So that means wait, what do? You have to, oh, you cough this up. Check. That way you can cough up the rook. Move away. I think we're getting a 2 knight against rook scenario, which the computer obviously always loves. Go and chop it. Chop, chop. There's no rook there, unfortunately, for him. Yeah, 2 knights against a rook. Great position. Trying to win that. Okay, so here we're hoping for knight takes, pawn takes. And there you go, right? The F pawn was anchoring in the knight on the E4 square. Now the pawn occupies the E4 square. So black just has a space advantage without the F pawn, without the isolated on a half open file F pawn. Instead, it becomes quite strong. You can support it easily with D5. You can shove it to E3 sometimes. So that looks like a nice edge for black. Trees. Oop, apparently I gave up his edge, but it can come right back. They wanted just to give him the doubled pawns. Oh, wait, is that? If that happens, I mean, again, Pyrrhic victory of slightly better pawn structure. Okay, well, there you go. There's that isolated pawn, which Caruana is blockading. So he has something to work with, but The knight looks really nice on e4. The rook's got the open file. There's pressure, so you have to be careful about the knight sometimes. Maybe d5 comes. Okay, then he just wisely makes a luft right there for the king. Maybe white does the same thing soon. Centralization, wants to play for a win, not trading too much. Also keep in mind, the more you trade down, the closer to a possibly difficult endgame you get where you can maybe win the f-pawn. Keep in mind, that's why Fabiano wanted the queen trade, right? And he hasn't helped Magnus fix his f-pawns, which is smart. So Magnus figures, if nothing else, my assumption is that, he has the weak pawn. So why does he want to go deeper into, go into an endgame? We're still in this kind of transitional phase, kind of like, let's say, I guess I could call it a late queenless middle game, but definitely a lot of attacking force on the board still. You treat it almost like a regular middle game. Can you attack the king? Yeah, it's possible. You could still go for try to attack the king somehow, shove the pawns, try to open up lines for the rooks. Okay, trade. And now we see the f-pawn becoming potentially problematic, right? He's about to win the f-pawn. Okay, gets himself a luft, goes for his attack. I mean, if nothing else, it might just lead you to win the a-pawn. So he's like, okay, interesting. So you get my f-pawn, I get your a-pawn. It looks like that's gonna fall because the king is too far away from it. Yeah, so if we have a trade here, for example, take, that can fall whenever he wants it to fall. Oh, that's hanging. Wait. Can you take it immediately? I think you can. That's pretty nasty here. As long as you can't dislodge the knight. Yeah, is this good for black? I imagine this is quite good for black. -2, yeah. Does he have to go into this? Yeah, so he shouldn't take. Should take with the rook. So he shouldn't take with the d knight, because that's -2. Shouldn't take with the g knight, which he did, -3, almost. So he should take with this one, -5, messes up the pawn structure. So basically, he's got the f pawn. He gets the d pawn, hitting the d2 pawn, and he might want to swing and win the a pawn. So let's say it goes here. Yeah, it's really murky. So just think of the f pawn dynamically, right? He just coughs it up, but he gets so much play that, regardless of whether he gets the pawn back, it's probably good, but he does get the pawn back. Brings the rook up, and you could swing and all that. Yeah. Black's got all kinds of play. Let's say he kicks the rook. Yeah, I don't think you want to take. Didn't you have this? Yeah, you don't want to do that. So you swing. Say you swing here. Does he have king b2? Hit that pawn. See, now he's got some serious problems. Well, we both have the same pawn structure, exactly the same pawn structure, but black is swarming against white's pawn structure. So he takes this way. So you see, it's all in context. Can't be orthodox in our thinking. We have to be flexible in our thinking. Okay, knight c takes d2, which is correct. I'm gonna get away from it. No more computer. We can't become, every time you start seeing stuff, you keep going like, oh wait, the computer said no, hold on. Let's stop that computer analysis. Okay, so knight c takes, he wins rather quickly. He wins within 5 moves now. So this is just totally losing. Okay, but we're gonna find out why. So take here. Okay, now that you take on c4, so it's like he should just not have been hungry for the pawn. Oh, he had 7 seconds though, and Magnus had 9 seconds. They were, yeah, Magnus just handled the pawn structure, the time pressure better, and the pawn structure better. He handled the pawn structure better under time pressure. In time pressure. Okay, knight cxd2, rook over, c4, and look at that. He doesn't have the f pawn anymore, but now he's got the c pawn. So he coughs up the f pawn. Boom, c4, boom. That's nasty. And if the knight does move, are we going to get another exchange up position? Or probably more than that. I feel like we're getting mates coming now. Wait, let's say the knight were to go here. Is there a mate? Well, I don't know. I mean, there's this. Let's see. Real quick, I'm just curious. I don't have too much time to check. Yeah, we have this one. King runs away. There's an exchange for you. Take the exchange. Yeah, just an exchange up scenario again. And a pawn. So that's funny. It happens again, exchange and pawn up. But then he loses. Okay. So I guess he doesn't like any of that. So he's like, okay, well, that's losing if you give the piece up. Just kind of playing like it's like chicken with its head cut off moment. You know, you're like, you're already done, but you just keep running around for a little bit, just kind of going with the momentum. Takes. Yeah, I have my certain sayings that I like for chicken. But although, yeah, you know, some of those American sayings can be pretty bland. Got to look into the British sayings a little more, you know. China, yeah, and Chinese they have really interesting sayings. Tend to be a little more meaningful than a lot of the English sayings. Knight F3, but I guess they serve their purpose. Now it says mate in 20. Take como agua para chocolate. Agua para chocolate. Right? Okay, rook C8 check from Spanish. Knight F3, rook 1 G2, knight C3. So just a piece up. Can't do much about that. That was nice. I mean, yeah, so I wasn't looking at the clock. But now that I look at it, see they were in time pressure. Look at their time. They were down to under 10 seconds for how long? Because it was such a complex game. So, okay, now we got 117. So Magnus was below. After move 10, he was below. Man, oh, that's really interesting. That's an important point for context. So he spent a ton of time to get a nice position out of the opening, just a little bit better. But I mean, he once he gets this position, he can really work this. I was looking yesterday at Reshevsky, and it's interesting. So on chessgames.com, they've got some, you know, kibitzing, some discussion. And there was a joke by Botvinnik, and he said that, oh, if he were to become champion, he says, well, that would mean that there are no strong. He said, well, he may become champion, but that means that there are no strong players left. And I speak languages, I guess that would be like a Russian sense of humor. So yeah, but he was this they call it wonderkind or whatever. Yeah, it was really a phenom from a young age, going around the world. And somebody was talking about, well, hey, if he were so good traveling around the world, beating everyone at that age, maybe he could have become the youngest grandmaster ever. But yeah, definitely check out Reshevsky's games. I like Reshevsky's games because he has a good balance. He had a good balance between dynamic play and positional play. So it's like positional and dynamic. I also like Petrosian. He has a super good defender, right? Similar to Karpov in terms of being one of the best defenders ever. And a little more dynamic too. Whereas Karpov is kind of just more like ironclad play. What it calls there's a blog entry that talks about Karpov having his diamond handcuffs in terms of his fancy restrictive play, just domination, slow domination, just a different style. It's good. I'm all about being eclectic and pulling from everybody, a little bit from everybody. Anyway, so he yeah, so Reshevsky would the other thing is what he said though is that his problem he said he didn't think Reshevsky was a complete player or something, but Botvinnik also said really his the time pressure has become a systematic part of his play. Similar to mine in a bit, just at a lower level. So me, lower level master, for him, top level master. I mean, so he was he was really among the best. He was playing in the, you know, world championship candidates matches and stuff. I think there was a knockout one even, was there? You have to look at Reshevsky's top tournaments on chessgames.com. But yeah, so he would get these great positions and he would be in extreme time pressure. But the thing about that is you really can use your opponent's clock. So Magnus did just fine, right? So he spent, let's see, how low was he down? They both spent a lot of time, really. They were just both draining the clocks together. Like, okay, well, this is, I didn't realize it's shifted to 5 minutes. I was only looking at the moves. I didn't see the context in terms of the time. So because this is a tie break, it's like 5 plus something, maybe 5 plus 2, 5 plus 5, something like that. So they already have a little bit of time to work with. And in order to gain this good position, a slight edge, wow, wait, where did he spend so much time? Okay, he spent almost a minute on castle and queen side. And there it is, bishop h6. Wow. It would be interesting to look at his analysis, look at the tiebreak analysis, tiebreaks one, where Magnus maybe talks about bishop h6 and why he spent so much time. I mean, I guess he was making some decision around the center, what he would do with the center. I mean, bishop h6 is a super logical looking move, but he must have just had something else in mind that he was wrestling with in his mind. So bishop takes c5, queen takes, rook e5. Yeah, so not ideal in terms of the time format, but then they both ended up getting really long time, and they kind of had a scramble. But this is such a high level scramble, so what would be a totally messy game for some was still a pretty refined game for these guys. So he ends up, but he just understands like, okay, so you can't even use your opponent's clock now too much, right? You only got a few seconds while they're thinking. But he just, I think, understands the dynamism of the F pawn, and he's able to cough it up. First, he has space, and he says, okay, well, now that your king has gone to D1, why did he go D1? Was it to guard the center? It may have been to guard, seeing that things would open, maybe to guard E2. But in doing so, you can see Magnus has this idea in mind. He's like, well, now I can go swing over to A6. I think that's the intention of couple. Well, clearly you have C4. So, like I say, first he coughs up the F pawn, then he shoves his C pawn. So you have C4, the dynamism. Again, probably not like the other game, probably not even B4. Creates rigidity. You don't always just need that. But there's definitely maybe B4 with Rook A6, but you can immediately go here to Rook A6 and already, no, he would only have Knight C1. Otherwise, you're just picking up the A pawn. A5, just take. It's even better, so I'm sure if you're on B4, you can take en passant if you want. But but that would allow White to close up the A file. Well, in terms of a rook lift going over. Now he's got a target on C4. So ultimately, what he does, he doesn't get C4 push, but he utilizes the B pawn. So it isn't B pawn assisting C4, but kind of de facto, because the B pawn trades for the other B pawn, and then he ends up winning the C pawn, and he moves, and he ends up getting that in. So it's the same thing. Think about it. It's the same thing as going C4 takes. He just does it in a roundabout way. All right, now I'm gonna go drink some water, clear my throat, and then he just coughs up the piece. You might say, why does he do it? Because that's just totally winning. Well, his lower mentality, but must have seen some really bad lines like the ones we were looking at. Said, all right, that's the best I got. And again, he goes roll with the momentum like a chicken with his head cut off, plays a few more moves, and he's like, all right, I'm done. He either lost arm time or he resigned. This was played. Yeah, he either resigned here or maybe he could have lost on time. Nice game. So keep an eye out. Are they going to tiebreak to 10:42? Wait, what? 10:42 a.m. I assume that. Yeah. Okay, here you go. Magnus has won. Yeah. So Aronian goes forward and Magnus goes forward. So I guess, yeah, then that means they're playing each other next, huh? Quarterfinals. Oh, this is round. Oh, it's round. My bad. This is round robin. So they're still going to keep going, and then they'll go to the knockout. Nice, great games. Hopefully, you found it useful, and keep an eye on those. And on whenever I can, I had some time. I don't have any classes this morning, so I had a lot of time. A couple hours to check this stuff out, catch up, do my quote office work, catch up on things. So, after this, take care of those logistics. Gotta take care of the logistics. So hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Get some more chess 960 analysis. Well, probably next time I'll play some games because this is definitely inspiring me to play more 960. Recently I got into bullet more. I had a good run. It's interesting you see the rating difference. I think this is a good example. So because bullet has been usually my weaker type of play, my weaker format. So I broke 2200 on chess.com, and I broke 2400 on Lichess. So it's kind of like FIDE versus USEF more so, I'd say. Lichess tends to be really inflated, except for chess 960, because that will usually be, well, you'll have an IM, maybe they'll be like 2100. One of the strongest IMs on the side. I'm blanking his name. You probably know him if you are on Lichess for chess 960. He's from Spain. And I think he's like a 21, 2200. So he's IM, so he's reached at least 2400 with 3 norms. So that's deflated. Now, as for these guys, I don't know. You probably know more than me about that, how it works with 960 ratings and everything. But I love seeing this. I love how big it's gotten. Chess 960 / freestyle chess on the global stage, which is super exciting. And so I'm going to be looking out for the rest, and I'll do some more recordings. Good luck to them. Caruana is a previous champion, so it was really cool to see that match between this match between Caruana and Carlsen happening just this